Last Halloween, we received quite the treat. A global original unit with a CG limit burst, and 2 out of the blue Neo Vision Awakenings. Oddly, the centerpiece of the trio ended up being far stronger than she first seemed, due to a bug in her limit burst that made it much stronger. But with the bugs gone and a full moon lighting up the night, is this discounted banner with Neo EX Awakenings really a trick or a treat? At EX plus 2, Lucius gets the passive Sharpened Slices in his base form, which boosts his attack by 500, increases his equipment attack when dual wielding, gives him 3 strong killer buffs, and raises the damage modifiers of Umbro Slash and Severing Slash. This is nice and all, but given the fact that his options are just inferior to his Brave Shift, you're not going to want to spend too much time in this form anyways. For his Brave Shift, he gets Eldritch Wrath, which gives the 500 attack boost, buffs the limit burst, now the full break is 85% rather than 80%, and the damage modifier has doubled. Those aren't the only effects. He also gets a 150% passive boost to his limit burst damage, the 3 killer buffs, and the damage modifier buffs to Umbro Slash, Dark Illusion, Blazing Illusion, and Shadow Assault. At EX plus 3, he gets a new active ability, Burgeoning Chaos, which inflicts a 25% Fist Imperil, raises his limit burst damage by 200%, gives him an incredible 150% Demon, Human, and Reaper killer buff, and completely fills his limit burst gauge. Now, overall, Lucius gets bonus damage towards his standard abilities, but the foundational problems with him haven't changed. 1. Divine Ruination isn't exactly the hottest chaining family around. 2. His Brave Shift's limit burst is kind of wonky when you try to chain it. Take a look at this. For example, for whatever reason he takes a pause here before dealing the next few hits. And more egregiously, those last several hits land way too fast, thus breaking the chain for the next hits. By the way, ignore the fact that Arab's much stronger here. I didn't give Lucius any equipment. Ultimately, you may just prefer using his bolt and strike chains. But frame data, who cares? How's his damage? Well, a Lucius at EX plus 3 would be comparable to a Tifa at EX plus 2. No, not that Tifa. Overall, the EX Awakenings definitely improve him, though ultimately he doesn't really make a splash in the current meta so infested with physical damage dealers. I'd say he's comparable to Shadow Lord, which isn't bad by any means, though not too noteworthy either. At EX plus 2, Grimlord Sakura gets the passive Grim Mastery in both forms. It raises the chain modifier cap by half the limit, gives her a bonus equipment magic boost when carrying a single weapon, 3 different killer buffs, and raises the damage modifiers of Grim, Soulblade, Scythe Reap, Dark Scar, and Inferno. The passives are great and all, but the most important thing for a damage dealer are modifiers. Soulblade isn't particularly strong to begin with, perhaps because it can be imbued, but even with the other active ability buffs, the ultimate damage modifier isn't that great. Scythe Reap and Dark Scar get the same boost, and while they have a higher base modifier, it's still not really ridiculous. Inferno actually receives double the modifier boost, but you have to remember that Grimlord Sakura can only use this in her base form, where she only has a triple cast at best. Comparing a triple casted Inferno to a quadruple casted Scythe Reap sees Scythe Reap winning by a small margin, and you have to remember that's not even getting into the other differences between her two forms. At EX plus 3, she gets 500 magic and a new active ability, Grim, Creeping Eve. It grants your team a double 130% killer against demons, humans, and reapers, while buffing their dark damage by 30%. The dark damage is great, though it's a bit unfortunate that the killer buffs are weaker than the ones from her Magnus ability. It's a given that team buffs can be weaker than self buffs, but with Mastermind's on, you may as well just spread the stronger buffs. Of course, if you don't have room for him, then you can stick with the weaker buffs, and you do get dark amplification, which is pretty helpful. So, how strong is Grimlord Sakura? On paper, the buffs are great. She's got a boost to the chain limit, more magic, and more modifiers. The extra killers also give you more room for better equipment. Still, what really matters is her viability compared to her competition. It's a given that she can't compare to Yigni, but she also doesn't really beat out Emperor Vlad or Luis in either of their elements. In terms of pure strength, I'd put her above Mello, which really isn't all that impressive currently, though still a definite step up compared to her initial state. At EX plus 2, Ibarra gets Oni Mastery in her base form. This ability not only pushes her chain cap limit, which is already important enough, but also gives her 2 killer buffs and raises the damage modifiers of her best abilities. For her Brave Shift, she gets Darkest Sorcery, which actually pushes Ibarra's limit burst to even higher levels than before it was bugged, especially when Clash of Wills is taken into account. Unfortunately, it does lose out on its piercing effect, and while it's not weaker because of that, it's not as strong as it could be. Of course, the killers and damage modifiers are still there for relevant scenarios, and just as useful too. At EX plus 3, Ibara gets 600 magic and Vengeful Prayer in both forms, a permanent, automatic buff to her magic, limit burst damage, and lightning and dark damage, buffs that aren't present in her regular kit. And since they're permanent, you don't have to waste time activating them either. So how strong is Ibara? Well, first thing I should notice that Ibara at EX plus 1 will play differently than one at EX plus 2. You see, in the past, her limit burst had actually been bugged, dealing more damage than at first glance. As a result, she became a powerful limit burst damage dealer, despite not having any limit burst damage buffs at all. They ended up fixing that bug here, which makes Ibara at EX plus 1 much more reliant on her active ability chains, just as they probably had intended. Admittedly, it does make her ultimate damage output weaker. If I were to give a measure of comparison today, I'd say it's around the level of Neo Vision Spooky. But with EX plus 2, they give much more focus on her Brave Shift's limit burst, making it even stronger than it was when it was bugged. It gets even better in Clash of Wills, though sacrifices that boost for its piercing effect. As a result, outside of Clash of Wills, the boost isn't as extravagant, but that just goes to show how ridiculous morale scaling can be. And that's not even getting to EX plus 3, which lets her damage skyrocket even further in Clash of Wills. Ultimately, when the stars align, Ibara's viability soars by extraordinary heights. Her EX Awakenings have greatly improved her strength, which is sure to be welcome news for anyone who can spare the materials to upgrade her further. Overall, the EX Awakenings are a great boon, but you also have to remember that these buffs are contingent on getting there in the first place. The 3 units at EX plus 1 haven't really been improved, and it's hard to put a pitch for them for new players when they may not have the materials for their EX Awakenings. It might just be more economical for them to go after a new unit, rather than someone older. It's especially difficult when you take into account their current viability in comparison to the rest of the available units. Lucius has little going for him other than his strength, and that strength isn't all that impressive for its price. Grimlord Sakura at least has additional support if you can spare the materials, which puts her in a better position. Ibara is easily the standout champion here. The new buffs, especially the involvement of Clash of Wills, gives her an even greater edge that lets her define herself even today. Ultimately, with the fact that the Halloween banner comes at a discounted price and a limited pool, it's definitely worth thinking over depending on her current inventory. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, leave a like and subscribe. Comment below if you plan to EX Awaken any of the 3, or if you don't have them and plan to get them now. Personally, though I have Lucius and Grimlord Sakura, I don't have the materials to upgrade them. Not that I really feel like it right now. I didn't get Ibara when she was first released, and while her CG limit burst looks fantastic, there's still not much incentive to use it, so I plan to skip this time around as well. Of course, I also just don't really have the lapis to do so, but let's just overlook that.